Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. I'm Doug Cunnington, and today I'm going to talk about if TikTok is actually banned. And I have to be honest, I think this is very surprising to me, even though we've heard about it for probably well over a year or so. And it's seeming like in the next 3 days, it may actually happen. And I put a couple links here in the description so you can go read some stories in greater detail. But I'm just going to summarize a couple things. We're going to talk about like what might happen, right? So I learned this through a little bit of research, and I'm sure you may have run across some of the same information. Additionally, I'll talk about the sort of creator side of this. So what you might want to do if you have built your platform, built your audience on the TikTok platform, which, we often talk, if you've been around long enough, we often talk about ensuring that you build an email list or have some way to directly have your audience reachable by you. Email is probably the best way. But if you build on top of another platform like TikTok, even though you may have a lot of growth there, you are subject to their algorithm updates, for example, or if they get shut down in this case. So I'm going to read kind of a little summary in case you're not exactly aware of what is going on. So TikTok plans to shut down its U.S. operations on Sunday, January 19th. That's just a couple days. And that's in response to a federal ban requiring its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to divest the app by that date. If the shutdown proceeds, users attempting to access TikTok will see a pop-up message directing them to a website with information about the ban and options to download their data. The U.S. Supreme Court is currently deliberating on the law's legality, while President-elect Trump is considering an executive order to delay the ban by 60 to 90 days. In the meantime, many U.S. TikTok users are migrating to alternative platforms, and we'll actually talk about some of the alternative platforms today. But many of them are going to a Chinese app called RedNote in anticipation of the potential shutdown. The side note with RedNote, which I hear is like one of the highest downloaded apps in the last couple of days, is pretty sure that's owned by the Chinese government and or Chinese company. So that's a dead end as well. Like that would also be subject to the same law as noted before. And while we're at it, we'll just talk about Lemon 8, like the fruit, Lemon 8, like the digit, also owned by ByteDance. So same situation there. So if people are migrating there, it's not going to make a difference because the same ban applies. So let's make sure that everyone in the chat can hear me. Say hello. Let me know where you're from. Let me know if you're a TikTok user. So as we open up and, we talked about the core things that are happening here, I'm surprised it even got anywhere close to this. I thought there would be some sort of resolution or something different. We'll look at some other of the latest breaking news, but there is, I've seen a story out there where Trump is thinking of an executive order to stall the ban, which is kind of funny. I think if you look back at the history, like the eventual ban on TikTok, the law, I think some of the original stuff was from Trump, some of the original thoughts from his first presidency. So let's get into the nuts and bolts. And as always on these live streams, I'll answer questions if you have them, and we'll tell stories, stuff like that. I'll hit the main stuff right away in the first 5 minutes or so, and then we'll keep on going. And I wanted some water to squirt it out at me there. Quick note, I do these live streams every week, usually on Tuesday, usually at noon, but I was out of town, so I postponed it, and here we are doing it today, but I want to just hit the points right away here. So I would say if you are a TikTok creator specifically, if you're a user, honestly, it probably doesn't fucking matter, right? You can go to one of the other platforms and there's probably similar content and you can go there and it's fine. They've tried to emulate in many ways the TikTok algorithm in the other apps. Best alternatives are probably Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. So I would say if you have an interest in consuming that kind of content, number one, I encourage you to not do it. Take this as an opportunity to just move on with your life. But if you want that kind of content, then you got Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Those are the closest things, and they're just different platforms, a little bit different. But I mean, honestly, I know that some creators that are big on TikTok, they just put the content out in other places. It's all, to me, it's just a commodity. Like, it doesn't even matter. That said, I try to stay away from social media most of the time. I do waste some time doing it, but largely, if you're a user, I don't think it's going to fucking matter that much. You can go somewhere else. I'm saying this as a non-user of TikTok. So at some point I downloaded it and checked it out probably, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that, because I was like, this could be a marketing channel or a content creation area where I need to spend some time. And then as they all degrade down to showing me stuff that I don't want to see, or realize that I don't actually want to spend time consuming that content, I uninstalled it and moved on. Later, actually somewhat more recently, I think I had some, light business reason to check it out. There was something I needed to check on. So I popped over and I never used the app, basically. I do use the alternatives, which Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. So I consume some short form content, but largely I try not to because it is a waste of time to me. That said, there have been people that told me, oh, I use it to learn stuff. And that kind of shocked me because it's such short form content that maybe not worthwhile. So anyway, that kind of surprised me. But nevertheless, those people felt like they were getting something out of it, and that's cool. I'm not here to judge people, but I will probably anyway. So if you're a creator, though, this is more important. So there's actually a couple people that I've met in the last few months, probably more than I know, but at least, some people that I interviewed, they wrote a book, and they're both big on TikTok. And they built their following, I think starting in the pandemic timeframe around 2020, but I think they both have over 1 million followers on TikTok. And they're trying to, build stuff in other platforms too, but mainly they're on TikTok. And they had somewhat of a kind of a first mover advantage where they were on there for a few years. They have a good following and they've been able to, build large businesses off of TikTok. The problem is, even though they have, reasonably sized followings in other areas, TikTok is their main thing. So if I was giving them advice, which I'm sure they're hoping that this is not going to go through, like many creators or people that have spent a lot of time building a following on TikTok, they need to go somewhere else. So they were already starting to try to de-risk because they're smart. They know that having all of your audience on one platform where you don't have much control is not a great thing. So they've been trying to build in other areas. I think the number one place has been YouTube Shorts, and this varies depending on where you want to build your platform, but you have other options. So Reels and Shorts, it's the same vertical format. It's the same short form situation. So it's super easy to just migrate over there and put your content out there. You potentially you already have been doing it, but if you're in this situation where potentially in 3 days it's going to be shut down, people won't be able to access it in the same way, then you may run into trouble. Now, that said, some of the articles that I've read kind of state that you might still be able to access the existing app, but there won't be like updates, there won't be any sort of maintenance, and you can't download a new version. So I'm not sure if that's true or not. So your mileage may vary on that. But let's talk about alternatives a little bit more. So I mentioned that Reels and Shorts might be the best place to go, but there are others. And again, I mentioned it at the opening that RedNote is a Chinese app, and it is being downloaded a lot as an alternative, but it seems like that is just going to be banned as well. So it does, I'm not even sure why or how. People are stupid. Like when it comes down to in mass, many people are stupid. So that is a bit of an issue, since, I mean, when you look at the like the core piece of the law, like we just mentioned, if you go to RedNote or if you go to Lemon 8, it's not really going to make a difference, as they're going to be in the exact same situation. But there potentially are others. I would suspect that people are going to, or companies are going to try to figure out how to emulate it as close as possible. And I think there will be other things popping up. So when things change, there's often an opportunity for other companies. Again, there's a few others out there, but the major ones where the audiences are, I mean, that's where you should probably go if you were building a business. And you could take this as a lesson to diversify away from traffic platforms. And if you're building an audience on another platform, you know, it's out of your control. Often apps aren't shut down. This is obviously highly irregular. However, it's very common for algorithms to change or something to change on the platform that impacts your ability to reach your audience. And we saw it in like 2014 with Facebook. So people would build up a big audience, and then Facebook suppressed the reach. Then the only was to run ads, and that's how Facebook earned money. So the popularity of like building a Facebook page like went down for a while. Ironically, it's back up now, or maybe not ironic. Is that the right word? But currently you're seeing a lot of people saying, "Hey, I'm doing a Facebook group, and it's working really well, and I'm earning money, blah, blah, blah." So things go up and down, but overall, I would say just spread out to other platforms, and that'll be a good thing. So just want to check in. Any questions out there? I see a few more people have popped in. Let me know if you could hear me okay. Seems like it's pretty good. Yep. And a couple quick notes as well. So this live stream is brought to you by Linkify, and you can save 10% with a discount code Doug. And they are running a PR campaign for me, and they got a couple great links for me. One at NASDAQ.com. They got an Ahrefs link, and they used to work over on the Haro platform, but that's gone away. But they have already found alternatives to use, and this is digital PR. So they get you essentially quoted on large websites and large publications. Chris has been on the show before, and it's worth taking a look. Again, if you use the coupon code Doug, you could save 10%. So thanks a lot to Linkify. So I was doing a little research before, and there are links in the description here. So you could, I think this Reuters article is one of the most thorough that I ran into, but it's very interesting once you go through some of the details here. And of course, there are a bunch of other stories. And if you go over and Google it, you'll see top stories out there. And it's crazy. Things are just up in the air. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the next few days. Again, this is very interesting. Some of the more I guess the stories that you may want to pay attention to are around the like creator space. So if you're watching this, you're probably thinking about side hustles and stuff and affiliate marketing on TikTok, for example. So there's a lot of like local news channels that are covering that kind of stuff. I watched a few of those, found them kind of interesting, but you hear the same story again and again. So I think we covered it pretty well as far as alternatives for TikTok. And the one other thing that I haven't mentioned, but the coverage states that TikTok is going to allow you to download your content, as far as I could tell. I don't know the scope of that or anything, but if you do have a bunch of stuff, a bunch of videos out there, a bunch of content, it might be worthwhile to pull that down. So additionally, you could take this as a lesson to build your platform or build your audience on a platform where you have a little more control, or as much as possible, try to build an email list, because that will be the best way to contact your audience without any sort of impedance from the platform, and it sort of de-risks you. So try to head over. I would say, in my opinion, I think you should look at your audience and maybe try to figure out if your audience is more likely to be on Instagram or YouTube. And then you could use that for where you may want to migrate over to. So the thing is, that might be based on the content that you produce. It might be based on the age of your typical audience, maybe some other factors, but imagine your demographics and where they might hang out a little bit more. So in a general sense, I think Facebook probably skews a little bit older. I'm 45 and I don't spend much time there, but I do know a lot of other, my peers seems to a lot of times when they have families. So I would say people like 45 or older, it's probably a good bet that the demographic is going to be on Facebook. Potentially Instagram, they obviously same company, they go hand in hand. A little bit younger, like, or if people are not on Facebook, but roughly my age, they might be on Instagram a little bit more. And then potentially on YouTube and YouTube Shorts. I think it might skew a little bit younger, but it might be a little bit older as well. It may span, the full range, because YouTube is fucking huge. All right, Paul is on here. Happy Thursday. Thanks for coming on. Johnny says, isn't everyone moving to RedNote? So yeah, we covered that. Again, there's some more details in the description. Additionally, you can take a look at the article that I mostly referenced, and you could also sign up to get YouTube notifications, and there's a few other links in there as well. But to your point, Johnny, yeah, RedNote is still owned by a Chinese company. I think one of the articles I read, I got the impression that RedNote was actually like a government-owned company as well. Kind of fuzzy in the Chinese economic format. But we do know that Lemon 8 is the other one, Johnny, and that one is actually owned by ByteDance as well. So both of those are going to both of those are going to fall under the same issue. All right. So those won't apply. Oh, Kent is on. What's happening? Thanks for popping on. Yeah, Kent mentions it's a good and timely topic. Thank you. One of the days, I just was like, what do I want to talk about? Very scattered these days, and not in a bad way, by the way. Scattered in that I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm like, what do we want to hear on these live streams? What are people interested in? But yeah, the news on this is very big. All right. And Johnny also says, I only know the name of the Chinese app, so I'm not sure the English name of the app. KEKW. All right. I unsure on that. So, and I found some of the stories. Well, okay. Let me get my thought out of my head here. I was doing some research for this. So I'm like genuinely interested, even though I'm not a user of TikTok. And I mean, I would say generally, if people ask me, I would say you should, like, we should all spend less time on social media and like more time with actual people and being social. I mean, that's just better. And I've been doing a lot more of that and hanging out with people and going hiking. A few friends were like, hey, you want to go on a hike? And I've been hiking a lot more, even though the weather is a little cooler. I just got back from a trip in Breckenridge. I'm not actually a skier, but hung out, made some food, went snowshoeing every day. It was really cool. So I would encourage people not to spend too much time on social media. That said, when I was doing research for this, I was looking at some of the backlash from, people on TikTok, people that built their audiences on TikTok. I know they're super frustrated. I mean, this in our little world here, or at least our former world where we were building content websites and writing articles and trying to work on good SEO tactics and strategies. Hold on 1 second. But then Google pulled the rug out from everyone to the point where basically the biggest proponents of building websites are now saying, hey, that's probably a waste of time. Like, Google's not going to rank you. They don't know what they're doing. And it's kind of a complete train wreck at Google. It's really horrible. So if you do a little research, you'll find that is the case. So very devastating to like lose a whole business model. But again, it's to the point where the biggest cheerleaders for websites are basically like, this is a joke. And I was going to say, I do see some other creators who, I mean, luckily a handful of my peers followed suit of many of us where we're like, we're not trying to teach this anymore. We wouldn't recommend it. It's much harder than it used to be. If you have an e-commerce site, that's a different situation. But generally, building a website, not a great idea, kind of a waste of time unless you are doing it to write content, and that is your main goal, not to earn money as a side hustle. The thing that is surprising is there's a handful of people in the general space that are still, I mean, they have an incentive to keep talking about websites and sell their products supporting websites. And I'm like, these are like the examples that they're giving are a little disingenuous, because it's like, oh, this website is so simple and it's making all this money. And it's like, I mean, like, if you wanted to recreate that now, there's no fucking way that you would be able to do it. It doesn't even make sense for them to cover that. It's like if I was like, hey, you see the wire cutter? They got purchased by New York Times and they're still running. Like, here's how you do it. It's like, well, you can't do that now. It's different. You can't do that now. So, all right. Let's get back to the chat. Thanks, folks, for popping in here. Johnny says, do people actually make bank on TikTok, though? So I don't have personal experience. However, I do hear quite a few people do. So I think you probably have to have a decent following and a lot of skill. But I think people do make a lot of money there. All right. Rue says, What's going to happen to the influencers who only marketed and sold on TikTok? We're not putting all our eggs in one basket, but the basket keeps disappearing or the payouts keep dwindling. Yes. Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. So it's like, even if you knew, so I mentioned some friends of mine, they wrote a book and they had each 1 million plus followers on TikTok. And I'm sure they're crapping their pants, and it's not a good thing, even though they have a book, they have an email list, they have a following on other platforms. The following cumulatively, I'm just sort of ballparking here, but I would say cumulatively on other platforms, I think it's only like 20% of their entire audience. So it's much, much smaller. So, thinking instead of, 2.5 million followers between the two of them, they may have, a couple 100,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot, but it's also like 10% of what they had. Again, I'm just ballparking that stuff. So what's going to happen to the influencers who only worked on TikTok? Probably pretty close to the same as all of the niche and authority site and content site people. That business is gone. Now, the good part is people can take the content that was on TikTok and move it over to another platform. The kind of obvious thing is like, there's going to be a whole lot more creators. So let's say that happens. Let's say 50% of the top creators from TikTok move over to, Reels and Shorts. There's going to be a flood of new content. Some people are going to take off on the algorithm and other people will not. And it's probably, who knows the odds of success or non-success on that. And Kent echoes the same thing. I've wondered the same thing. The numbers always seemed a little inflated to me. My daughters use it and neither has ever remotely considered buying something based on a video. Very true, Kent and Johnny, great points there. And I would say, well, fuck, I don't know. I only spent a little time on TikTok, but my understanding, I did interview a friend of mine named Paul who was doing some affiliate marketing on TikTok. And I think for the period of time that he was doing it, it sounded like shipping was subsidized. And there were a couple other things, like if you worked through the TikTok shop, like it was favorable. It was, essentially they sponsored it. So they made it cheaper so that you could earn money to like get people on the platform and excited about it. So the big thing, I mean, YouTube suffers from this a little bit, but YouTube is one of the more open platforms generally. And we could put a bunch of links in the show notes and the description, and we could put a little link up in the this corner, I think it usually is, if you want to. But largely, all the apps, the main job for the apps is to keep people on the platform. Just keep swiping, keep scrolling, show the ads. So that is the way they want it to be. So it's hard to get people off the platform, and some of the platforms don't really enable you to get off the platform very easily. But I would say you could also, take it as an opportunity to move to another platform, but you still face some issues. Okay. And Johnny says in response here that there are still people in the website space. I mean, they have an incentive, right? So if they have a WordPress theme or a plugin, or they do something, maybe they review products for creating content or whatever kind of thing might be relevant for websites. They have an incentive to say, hey, yeah, you can still do website stuff, which, I mean, you can still build a website and potentially still get traffic there's been a couple people that popped up. A friend of the show, Gaz, who often shows for the live streams, his traffic's been up. He's been working on his site for a few years. And then over the last year, I think he mentioned that it was going up. And Johnny says, you got to move to YouTube. Yeah, totally. I think YouTube is probably, I'm biased. I like YouTube. So, all right. Any other questions or thoughts out there? And the quick review is, I think we'll probably see, I would hope, something definitive by Saturday or so. I mean, this is stretched out so long. It seems like if anything is going to happen, it's going to be at the last minute on Saturday. This is supposed to happen on Sunday, January 19th. I assume that is probably like 12 a.m. Eastern time, something like that, if I had to guess. And it would, potentially it'll be just gone. So it sounds like TikTok users will see a pop-up message directing them to a website for more information and potentially an option to download their data, which that's kind of funny. That's the whole thing, is the data. It'd be funny if you download the data and it's like they have everything. The U.S. Supreme Court is still deliberating, and President-elect Trump is considering an executive order to delay the ban by 60 to 90 days. So it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. And I don't, it's been a little while since I've been in any sort of civics class, but I'm unsure how the executive order might be able to work or the legality of that. Because I think it was a law that came through via Congress. So I'm not sure what happens or how fast stuff can happen. So very good. I could tell some other stories here. I'm curious, do we have any other questions or thoughts out there? So one thing I'll riff on, if people want to sign up for the email list, you can go down, and I would go to the YouTube notifications. You can go there if you want to sign up to get notifications, so you don't have to rely on YouTube to send out the email when I go live. Or you can go all the way to the bottom, nichesiteproject.com, and you should be able to sign up for the email list if you want to. So if you pop over, I could even show you right here, I think. Probably. Struggling here with the tab. Hold on, I can get the tab for you. You can sign up for the email list if you follow the link, and then you'll get some emails and stuff like that. And the thing is, if you sign up for the YouTube notifications, then I'll send the email out, and that's what I sent out earlier today. I send out a few emails per week usually. So I got an email from someone on the email list, and they were asking about niche sites. And I've tried to cover this pretty well over the last couple of weeks specifically, but I've, kind of been talking about this for the last 6 months, that, your time is probably not well spent if you're working on a content website, which my channel, several other channels, like we were largely talking about publishing content, doing keyword research. So there's the website that I sent you to, like most of the content, 85% of the content is like how to build a website, doing keyword research and affiliate marketing. And it's changed so much. Now, some of the articles are old and I've tried to clean some stuff up, but since so many people are on YouTube and they read the email list, or maybe they're a podcast listener, that those other content areas are where I'm spending my time. So rarely am I writing very much, but I have had the itch recently. And we have a core group. It looks like there's 11 of us here on the live stream right now. So I'll ask you, and I need your opinion. So please write back if you have the ability to. If you're driving your car, don't do it. But if you have a chance. So I had this idea to, in a regimented way, read for I think maybe like 1 hour a day is pretty good. Read 1 hour a day for 30 days. And, sometimes stuff happens or I might be busy or whatever. So I would say as long as I do it like the majority of the time. But one thing has happened in the last year or so. I read a ton. I actually read, I've been reading more books than I have. And I'm reading a lot of fiction now. So I read a lot of fiction before bed. It just kind of chills me out and it's fun. I have the Libby app so I can get books from the library and get it on my Kindle. It's awesome. The thing is, I have still been buying nonfiction books and books that I'm actually highly interested in, but I just haven't been reading them. So I have a pile of them. I'll grab just a few. So my idea is this, to read each day, probably write at least a paragraph to capture like what I read in that book that day, and go for about 30 days. I'm very curious to see what will happen. The thing is, I like reading and I have a pretty good reading habit, but I've just been pushing off those nonfiction books because at some point I got a little bit of an overload. So I'll grab a couple that I haven't read, and I'm like, I really want to read that book, but I think maybe the couple others are upstairs. So this one, The Purpose Code, my friend just published this, Jordan Grummett, and How to Unlock Meaning. Trying to get it to focus there. How to Unlock Meaning, Maximize Happiness, and Leave a Lasting Legacy. Pretty good. And this one actually has been out for a while, but I love the idea of slow productivity, and I've heard Cal talk about this for a while. And the thing is, I've had the books. I got this book the day that it came out, but I haven't read it. Part of it is I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of times I will actually, hear the person talk about the book, but I want to read the book because I think there's still value to read it, even if you know the main points. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this. What are y'all's thoughts on it? So Paula says I need to get back into my reading habit. And I also thought about potentially doing like a little bit of a reading group where like a book club style. So it's like, all right, we're going to read this book and we'll share notes on it. Maybe doing it asynchronous so people can go at their own speed. And it's like the notes are in a certain place and everyone's reading and we're like, hey, I read my hour today, like to encourage folks to actually do it and keep some notes. Side note, one thing I decided to do in the last year or so, and I think, some of y'all already know this because I mentioned it. In the past, I would get a book and I would read it and, I'd maybe read it a couple of times, but I'm not it still looks like pristine and brand new. It's not like I'm throwing the books around, but I was like, I think I'm going to take notes all through the book and like not necessarily highlight stuff, but like put notes and, write all through the book. So it looks like I've, used it, and I've enjoyed doing that. There's a few books that I started marking it up, and I was like, oh, if I flip through, I can like go to the parts where I really enjoyed it. And then I've also, I can't remember who I heard this from, but it's not completely novel, but there's always like a couple blank pages in the back, or the back cover. So you could actually like create your own index. Whenever you find something awesome, you can, underline it or whatever. You can make notes in the margin, or like at the end of the chapter, sometimes there's a couple, like a blank page or two in there somewhere. Let me find one. But anyway, you have a spot where you put some notes in here, you write in the margins, and then you could write the page number there. So if you're like, I know there was something interesting in here, you could go to the index that you create there. So Johnny says, I've stopped reading for a while, only using AI and TTS to read it like a podcast. Oh, I have heard people doing that. Now, obviously there's audiobooks out there. So, all right, cool. Good feedback. Thank you. All right. I think I'm going to call it for today, and appreciate everyone popping on for the last minute. And I think I should be good to do this on Tuesday at the normal time. But if you want to stay informed, you can sign up for the email list and the notifications so that you know. Paula says this: it's a challenge for me to write in a book. Even textbooks were a problem. I keep a notepad in my books with sticky notes. Oh, that's a good idea. Sticky notes can work too. And the thing is, I was like, I want the book to look like it's been used and loved and that sort of thing. And I feel like, that's what the author would want too. It's just like, I was so taken aback and impressed by the content that I was writing all through it. So, all right, everybody have a good weekend out there. Stay warm. I think, at least, depends on where you're at, but there's some cold weather coming to the Colorado area, and it's going to be pretty chilly. It's going to be pretty cold out there. Super nice right now. I'm going to head to the gym now. I'll be able to wear shorts. It's warm enough to wear shorts. It's like 40 something, 50 degrees. But it's not negative. All right. It's not negative degrees. So that is good. All right. Cool. All right. We'll talk to y'all soon, and have a good weekend.